Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Welcome to Why We Roll, a tabletop role-playing game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio. We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Danse Macabre, and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet. Through the show, we hope to amplify new creative voices. We chat with different indie TTRPG designers, talking through a range of questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs. We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games so powerful. Before we introduce today's guest, a reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please consider supporting the show and all of our games over at patreon.com/Stillfleet. Okay, let's find out why we roll.
All right, well, we're live in more senses than one to talk about a book about dying, but also coming back, being real live. So it's kind of a bummer. It's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. There's, some would say that death defines life.
Some probably have said that.
Yeah,
People have said all kinds of crazy shit. So this is a special Why We Roll with just the hosts of Why We Roll.
That's us. I'm Chris Pickett.
And I'm Wythe Marshall. And we are actually in the same room. You can't hear this if you're just listening to the podcast version, but we're like hanging out.
If I do a good enough job leveling it, you won't be able to tell.
Ooh.
So leave a comment, I guess. Leave a review.
Challenge. So we're here with a special Why We Roll, just really to announce and celebrate and offer some specifics about Chris's game, which is launching on Kickstarter October 7th. Danse Macabre, medieval horror role-playing. You've probably heard or seen something about it if you're into indie RPGs, that kind of thing, especially if you follow this show. And this time we're going to try to not repeat things we've said before, but basically just go into a little more depth about the nature of the products as they're coming together, they're shaping up. Yep. And especially we have some cool games. Chris is running some games. I'm actually running a couple games. So we're pumped to be able to share those. Some streaming games, as well as one exciting thing, which is, an ongoing series, but not, infinite, of sort of West Marches, open games that anyone can join to really play test and again, have fun during the campaign. And then our first ever big live event. So a few different kinds of things. So we'll get into those specifics. But first, maybe we could just kind of check in, do a little bit of an update, Chris, about, the game itself. So maybe to recap, what is Danse Macabre, and just real quickly, kind of where are we at today, a month out from going live with taking your idea, as I recall, of several years at this point.
Yeah, a couple years.
Trying to print it, which is, it always changes. So I don't know if you want to sort of start by just being I don't know, this is what I wanted to do and this is what it seemed like we're doing. And, we can just talk about it. I don't know.
Well, we're doing what I wanted to do, which is great. But yeah, definitely the game has changed over time. Longtime listeners of the show will remember that we had published a book last year, which is called Danse Macabre Prima Mors, which was kind of a first foray into the world, kind of a first exploration of the concepts in it, which, if you're not familiar, the idea is that in the mid-14th century, in the 1300s, death has stopped working how it used to. And now when people die, they are revived within a few hours, and they come back with these body horror, Cronenbergian body horror mutations, which in the game we call Maleficia. I mean, the player characters are called pilgrims. You are conscripted convicts who are kind of forced to go out and find this resource that's called quintessence, the only thing that allows people to die a natural death where you don't come back as a messed up tentacle dude or something. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So we put out Prima Mors last year. Like I said, it was kind of an early attempt. A lot of just exploring the kind of ideas. We had a general kind of worldwide setting that presented 3 specific places, which was Constantinople, Granada, and Avignon in the south of France. One big change between now and then, certainly, is that we decided to focus just on Constantinople. It was something that while we were developing things, I really wanted to, have the time to go in depth with a location, with a setting, and really dig in, look at factions, look at the politics, look at the real history of the place, and adapt it into this kind of apocalypse of unlife setting that we had. I think, out of the 3, we were kind of most excited about Constantinople, about the kind of political situation there. We've set it up so that it is a diarchy. So it's now ran by both by a faction of Ottomans as well as the Byzantine Greeks. So that's very exciting. That's been built out quite a bit. I am currently wrapping up the big lore chapter about Constantinople, about the dozen factions, the literally dozen factions that are in the book, which has been really fun. It's been really exciting to get to delve into the history again and really work my brain to the bone, trying to figure out how they would interpret this apocalypse and how people would react to it, and how to make it interesting and toothsome for players, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And with Paris, which we'll spend a little probably less time on, but we can speak to more. The book I'm writing, it's the same problem of there's a lot of stuff to say about real medieval history, but how much of it can be operationalized in a quest in a fun way, and without dumbing anything down about events before 1360, without while still trying to kind of get the sources right or understand the bigger picture. It's we don't have time to do PhDs in history.
Right.
So we're working with a lot of secondary sources and just kind of thinking, okay, what is a factoid that becomes, an encounter, a weapon, a note about a social kind of, a plot. Mm-hmm. Versus what's something interesting that ultimately needs to be cut. And I'm running into it because I've gotten so bogged down with specifically Paris as a place and the architecture and the streets. So it's interesting to think about with Constantinople, very different and in such a deep, rich history. Possibly one of the hardest settings in that sense of I guess equivalent ones would be I don't know, Beijing, Rome, these places where you would just have so much stuff. Literally, so many roads and houses and churches and things that go back. Paris is up there in terms of it's been around a while. There's a lot of churches.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So at some point I had to be okay, this D100 list is going to be a D20 list. Because how many Églises does it really, it doesn't matter, right? It's just to get some flavor, get some plot hooks.
Well, and hopefully, folks running the game, GMs, which in the book we call chroniclers, are able to take a look at these different settings. And even though, they'll never be totally complete, right? Like you said, we're not getting PhDs in history. I love history. I consider myself an armchair medievalist. But that's very casual, you know? So doing our best to give it life, to give it a lot of texture, but also allowing space for people who are running and playing the games to explore and to add their own stories into it, which is kind of of primary importance to me in a lot of ways.
Synecdoche versus simulationism is a big thing in games. So we're not trying to accurately simulate the whole medieval world in a completely unbiased and complete way in 1390. We're trying to provide these props, these pieces that stand in for social worlds in a more or less unbiased way that is really fun in terms of a zombie, apocalypse type game that has, social component, but there is a large, kind of old school artifact retrieval, sort of wilderness crawl, dungeon crawl component. So to take it all the way back, you had a 2d6 version with a kind of rules light OSR approach. And that was up on itch and was cool. And we played it actually in the show in the very, very beginning.
Yeah, we did.
The second episode or something.
We did, yeah.
And then it evolved to Prima Mors, which was using the grit system, and was much closer to what it is now. But the full version, there are some differences. So I thought if you wanted, you could tell us a little about what's changed in writing out. It's still not terribly long, but we're aiming to be around 200 pages at A5. Some of which is setting. There's lots of encounters. There's lots of, there's 100 mutations.
Yeah, there's a lot of mutations.
That's a big chunk. So, as a player, you're not using all one, right? You're using like one or two at a time. So it's not like overwhelming. It's just, it's a full book. And during that, there have been some rules changes, some sort of things that have shifted. So I don't know. And even the language, actually. So you can kind of take it however you want. But what are some recent things over the summer that you've kind of ironed out and decided, having now written kind of the full version and not the quick start version?
Yeah, I mean, one big change for players specifically is kind of the starting background classes that you can start as. I think in Prima Mors we had 6 different backgrounds, and they were kind of highly specific, right? It was like you could be the apothecary or the soldier, things like that. That were a little bit more playbook style, which is something that I like, but I didn't feel like it fit the kind of overall OSR vibe of the game, just through playtesting and whatnot. So we've ended up kind of whittling that down and making it a lot more open-ended. So when you create a character now, you can choose from either being a peasant, a scholar, or a burgher. So, they reflect real social classes of the time. The feudal system, by the end of the 14th century, it's kind of breaking down quite a lot. So the kind of like classic, those who work, those who pray, those who fight had dissolved to a large part. But kind of taking that as inspiration, we're using these 3 character classes. And each one of them has unique kind of starting background powers that you can choose from. But then after that, you're all pilgrims. So every time you advance a level, you can choose these advanced powers that it's a big pool that everybody shares from. Yeah. There are 100 advanced powers. They're kind of divided between combat, survival, and social powers. But it allows players to really customize their character. And even if they're, like say you roll up or you create a scholar and you're like, oh man, I'm not very fighty and I keep dying and getting more mutations. Well, there's options, right? So as you advance, as you kind of move forward narratively, you're able to really tweak your character however you want, however you see fit. And that can be narrative, it can be kind of power gamey, kind of like whatever people prefer at the table, really. I'm trying to cater to both in a lot of ways.
And it works also at the level of game design. So one of the companion volume, Guide to the Abandoned World, has some new classes. And like what I did with the ones in Muromachi, Japan. So Japan, under the Ashikaga shogunate, it had just gone through a sort of minor civil war that was like, would presage in real life this like long period of civil war that would follow well after 1390. But basically there was a very well established samurai class that's a little bit different from feudal orders in the West, although obviously there's parallels. So I thought, okay, that'll be a cool starting point, and I'll look at what Chris has for advanced powers because there's so many. And then building, each class is basically a list of 20 powers to choose from. When you create a character, you get 3. And so I thought, okay, I'll do some new ones that are very reflective of this social world, this type of class that's still very rigid in a certain way,
Right.
But in other ways, it's just not one-to-one. It's not apples to apples in all ways. But in other ways, there are a lot of similarities. So okay, I'll look at some advanced powers that would be possessed by still like kind of a noble class built on fighting, right? On actually controlling the ability to fight and what arms circulate and all this stuff. Whereas, in the West, you had more of this kind of breakdown of like, fighting had moved into this kind of mercenary world already. Yeah, so for sure. Well before a lot of other. It's funny, like before banking got figured out, really.
They figured out how to kill each other.
Yeah, you figured out how to hire dudes to kill other dudes instead of having like normcore standing armies, and it feels very eerily modern. Just reading some of those tales of routiers in France and stuff in England, and you're like, wow, that is just Blackwater assassination squads during the 100 Years' War. But anyway, so I think it works to have these long lists as characters level, and then as a game designer, you can actually pull on those and make new classes by thinking what is, to your point, it's like a class in this game means a social class, a group of people who would be likely to start the game with a certain, distribution of kind of useful skills in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's almost like playing like red markets or something. But again, it's using the grid system. It's fairly rules light. So the powers, I will say, are still, if you've looked at the earlier versions, they're still short. They're like one or two lines. They're like +1 on this, advantage on this. They're not typically very long, except mine are longer because that's I know how I write. So, whatever, you get a falcon and it's like, okay, now I need stats for like your falcon that can go claw at people's eyes. But yeah,
sick.
the game is cool, and I think the guide will offer versions that are, I think, pretty closely aligned, but show how Chris's vision can be taken to these other places. And I think we've said, like, over time, maybe that would be cool to have, Danse Macabre in different settings and kind of that franchise. If, again, if people play the game, we have plenty of ideas, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
I mean, before we get into other offerings, such as the guide, which is very exciting, just some other stuff that's changed in the book, it's just developed out of playtesting and out of, like, getting a better feel for how things run. The Maleficium, rather, that's the plural. Our translator, Erica Burgess, will appreciate us using the correct plural
the A
and
is
singular.
the plural, the UM is the singular. Yeah.
I thought it was the other way around.
No. A is plural.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been messing that up lately.
UM is singular.
Okay. The Maleficia, that's developed out a lot, right? So in Prima Mors, we offered up a D20 list of Maleficia, which, they were all kind of short entries, kind of similar to other class powers, advanced powers that are in the book. But we've kind of moved in a direction where there's just a lot more of them.
It's a lot.
It's a D100 table. And something that I'm very excited about is that each one of those entries for mutations has 3 different levels to it. So it allows some flexibility when you're rolling on that table. When you die, your character comes back within D4 hours, so between 1 and 4 hours. And then kind of in the interim, you're rolling on a couple of different things to see what happens to them. So, if you have a Maleficium and you roll the same thing on the table, you don't have to re-roll, you don't have to do anything, it just advances 1 level. And in all cases, the power just gets better. It gets stronger, it gets more useful, sometimes becomes a little bit cheaper in grit, or sometimes gives you an option to burn more grit in order to kind of like express a higher level of that power. And they all, no matter what level your mutation is at, it shares just one kind of very simple downside, which feels good. I think that it makes getting the mutations much more interesting. I think that it kind of gives you something to play around with. And there's also an option when you advance as a character, instead of taking a new power that you're choosing from the advanced powers list, you can choose to level up one of your Maleficia, which I just think is kind of funny and fun to reflect that, like, oh, I'm getting better at something. And maybe it's that you've learned a new skill, or maybe it's just that you have learned how to better use your messed up body horror mutation for your advantage,
You're giving into it. Like we talked about Videodrome. Like,
yeah.
Is it that you're being, controlled, or you're embracing something and we don't necessarily know, so leaving that interpretation open to players, I think, is nice, because mechanically, it's fairly simple. It is a long list, but like I said, you're usually looking at one at a time, and you might have to start 0 to 3. And over the course of a game, I mean, depends how many sessions you play, but you probably won't have that many to keep track of. So it becomes much more sort of a question of, either if I rolled randomly, what character does that, how would that change someone's personality? Or if I didn't roll randomly and just pick stuff, what am I picking and why? So there's tons of options, right? There's 100 ideas baseline, and then they kind of get weirder. So I think that's fun. I will say also in Guide, in the companion volume, there's some cool ones, like our friend Michael J. Cohen came up with a bunch that are more sort of bestial and specific to, like, you're kind of becoming a human zombie version of an animal that would be in the Pacific Northwest. And I think that we've talked about, like, why would that be? And I think it's interesting to think that maybe Maleficia are a little different based on the person who dies beliefs, or what they think bodies are and how bodies work and participate in kind of a, this is all anachronistic, but a larger kind of environment or whatever. Right. So I think it's cool that you wrote out enough options where it actually works played straight. You can just roll randomly. It's sort of a grinder OSR thing, or you can create these kind of purpose-built, like, in this little world, or I shouldn't say little, but in this social, context, here's how bodies kind of work. And it doesn't really change the mechanics. It's not like a new game, or, oh, this is a really different version. It's like, I don't know, that's just how things are as far as we know in this place. And I think it gives GMs, chroniclers, some nice options. Yeah, so, and certainly players. I mean, for players, I would also like to really build out some final pregens that are just kind of more playbooky and like really fun.
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of fun with seeing what players come up with. And I think it'd be great to have almost like label them. Like maybe we do go back to like some of the pre-gens. It's like blah, 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 the archer or blah, 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 the arsonist. Like
I think for specific characters, that works great.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a first time player can say, cool, I want to be that. But then they realize like, oh, this is weird. This is not like the Legoless archer, right? It's,
Yeah. No elves.
No.
No magic. That has not changed.
That has not changed.
What's some other stuff? I mean, the book is expanded out so much from Prima Mors. There are like a slew of optional kind of wilderness crawl rules that you can implement. We've also got some interesting options around death and dying now, which I'm super excited about. One of them is just that for tables that want a little bit more high tension around dying and reviving. And I guess I should contextualize it right. If you die too many times, you lose yourself. You become what is called a demoniac in the game. It's the literal translation is just someone who is possessed by a demon. Again, just kind of a framing kind of thing. But you become a zombie, right? You are not yourself anymore. You're this kind of like reasonless. I don't know. You're a
pure id.
Yeah,
it's
pure
a trope
id. Yeah.
In all folklore. I mean, and again, we people interpret it differently in the different settings, but mechanically, okay, same difference. You die more than your max fervor dice, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put a D4 at fervor, you can only die four times. Come back 4 times. On the 5th time, you will be a demoniac. You become a bad guy, and that can be played out, or just sort of, we can sort of see the fade to black, and then it's like, okay, make a new character.
Right.
But you introduce these optional rules to sort of create more tension, and I think there's a couple of them. So
Yeah, I mean, so one of them is that just every time you die, you roll your fervor score. And, depending on the number of times you've died, it kind of changes the target value that you're trying to hit. And it just, the roll gets harder every single time. So if you fail that score, you're just a demoniac. It doesn't matter what your max fervor is, anything like that. And that is an optional rule, so the base rule is that once you exceed your fervor score, boom, it's all over. This one, again, like tables that want more tension, that want a little bit more like kind of grinder gameplay, or just to frankly feel scared.
More zombie apocalypse genre, I think also, right?
But it introduces a lot more uncertainty into the mix, which I think is great. And then, likewise too, we have an optional table for humanity loss, which is kind of it's expounded on narratively a lot in the book, but not really mechanicalized in a lot of places. So we have this D20 table. It's all narrative hooks essentially, but it's just like examples of like what pieces of yourself are kind of stripped away through this process. So it can be like your appetite or your empathy for other people,
right?
All kinds of stuff. Which is very inspired by the Metamorphosis by Kafka, or No Longer Human. What's the Ozai? Is that the author of that book?
I don't know.
But just kind of more like existential inspiration for that. So again, not super mechanical, but I think it adds that extra bit of flavor, extra bit of push to like help players role play those changes that happen not only to their body but also to their self, the concept of self, right?
Yeah, it's very dark. It we tried it last night for the first time, this optional rule. The whole party wiped. They fought some gargoyles, some demoniacs underground who become sort of, their skin is sort of camouflaged with the limestone and also hardened. And they have these kind of wings that wrap around them, but just to make them look more like stalagmites. So they have flesh that kind of, they can't fly or anything. It's just sort of weird flesh capes that kind of stiffen and wrap around them when they're just waiting in torpor underneath Paris. And the party just decided to fight them and absolutely had no chance mechanically of prevailing. And so were ripped apart, and then they moved on. They took they had this pair of Roman manacles, these relics. So the demoniacs took the relics and ran away somewhere else. And the bodies of the pilgrims, of course, came back. In 3 hours, they're all back. And they had new Maleficia, but we'd used the humanity loss. And that was an interesting moment to say, like, okay, how does, what does this mean for you? Because it's not mechanicalized. It's just a couple sentences, suggestion. But I think it brings it very much into that, again, Walking Dead or Red Market's kind of terrain of like, this is a brutal game. It's a brutal world. It's not a happy, heroic, we're going to save the day. Because even if you do something cool, it's sort of regionally cool, but worldwide there's an apocalypse,
Right.
and it's probably at the cost. You're probably losing pieces of yourself, and if you use this optional rule, you're incentivized. There's not really you do whatever you want with it, but sort of okay, you are constantly hungry, you can't be sated, or you've lost your appetite. You can't even enjoy you can't enjoy those human pleasures, those earthly pleasures.
Yeah.
So I think it reminds me of some of the Hieronymus Bosch inspiration, the kind of medieval ideas of being in hell. I mean, so basically Dante and Bosch, Dante's a little before this period, Bosch a little after, but they're still kind of among a bunch of writers, and artists, these kind of key figures thinking about demons and hell and these relationships before it all gets concretized into now the kind of D&D celestial order version.
Avernus.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I think it's cool that how does Danse Macabre draw on that without, right, it doesn't rebuild. There is no here's the table of all the demoniacs and the sort of species of them, how they fit together.
Right.
It's not that. It's much more like folklore. It's I don't know, maybe there's a guy who's like this and he's weird, but maybe it's different somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, we have some named demoniacs in the book that are basically encounter tables.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the names for those are directly drawn from folklore. So Turkish Anatolian folklore, as well as Greek, broadly Greek folklore as well. So you've got your Cyclops, you've got your Gorgodes, you've got your Haimon, stuff like that, or Hemon rather, which were ice monsters in Greek mythology. So it's you get demoniacs that have a bunch of ice-related maleficium. That's how they're going to be interpreted at the time. So we have those named demoniacs, but we really tried to focus on framing it the way that somebody from that place and from that time would frame it, right? How would they interpret what they're seeing based off of their experiences and also the stories that they've heard growing up. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of these direct tie-ins, but it does leave it open enough for GMs and players to, again, just play around, kind of create their own monsters, or just make them randomly and be well, this is what you see in front of you.
Yeah, and I think the random table is probably one thing that is still missing. Is a random kind of generator piece. Maybe that's even for a zine or some other piece, the guide. But I think a big piece that is in the rule book is to think of the inspiration being broadly the Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean specifically, and more broadly, just sort of Western Asia, and Europe. And then in the guide, we have a lot of different things. So for example, in the chapter on Japan, looking at yokai and what a lot of yokai are written about later. So it's okay, what was written about in the Muromachi period? But I was surprised how far back they go. The idea of Tsukumogami, the idea of you have weird objects, that are possessed by spirits in a way that is deleterious. But I thought, okay, what if it's a zombie with a weird object? A guy who's kind of merged with a barrel. So it's a barrel with human arms and legs attacking you. Yeah. And on the one hand, it's Doctor Who-ish and weird. But on the other hand, maybe just from, maybe there's still a lot of liquid in it. And this guy weighs 900 pounds and can crush you. And it's just terrifying of how did this happen? It's kind of an industrial accident in a zombie apocalypse, but kind of really focusing on this is such a common myth, in Japanese folklore that I guess is kind of, even again before commodity capitalism, there's this sort of real focus on everyday objects. The lives of everyday objects. So, okay, that's in people's heads. And then when they die, they're thrashing around, and somehow that happens more there, or we just don't hear about elsewhere, or whatever. Again, we're not going into the why. We're not creating that kind of, the D&D rules that work exactly the same everywhere. It's just it's a simple concept. You die, you come back, and draw on folklore from the region. That's how people there are thinking about it. Yeah. And maybe there is a recursivity where it's lightly influencing the actual monster encounter. So from a design perspective, I thought that was a nice aha moment when we were kind of thinking about okay, we don't want them all to just be generic zombies, right? Right. But we didn't want to go the route of over explaining the MacGuffin, the novum. Yeah. So I think it was nice to say, use folklore, make it weird and fun, and I think it's working out in practice. Very brutal game.
Yeah, it is. The what's the name of that demoniac?
Tsukumogami is the kind of yokai that is an object, an umbrella is a really famous one.
The umbrella. Yeah, that makes sense. It's reminding me a lot. I know you're not a video game guy, which is no shade whatsoever. But one of the big inspirations for Danse Macabre is Souls-like games, is Dark Souls and Elden Ring and all that good stuff, where they have weird rules around time and death and dying and stuff as well. But for listeners who are familiar with the Dark Souls series, it's reminding me of the mimics from that game, which are horrifying. It's not like, in D&D you got a mimic, it's it's basically like just a mouth. The mimics in Dark Souls have got that going on, but their teeth are made from human finger bones.
Oh.
And when you wake one up, it stands up. It has these incredibly long legs and long arms that like emerge from the box and then come and like, fuck you up. That's what that's reminding me of. So, it's interesting. There are these like through lines through different pieces of media.
Well, and I wonder how much that's drawing on Pret or Preta. So in Southeast Asia, the dominant kind of, like in Thai, you'd say P-dip, like ghost form that everyone knows about. I mean, there's specifically Thai legends. This is really South Chinese, but it's now like endemic to East Asia. Along with the flying head with the intestines, which is kind of like melee, that Grasu or Panangalan. But the Pret is just like a really, really tall, hungry zombie, like a hungry ghost who's really tall. And I think the idea of like the simplicity of like, I don't know, kind of a naked body that's, that it's human. And we talked about this with Jed, our editor, who was bringing up, who's great, but we were having this discussion of humanity and self and what are the right terms. And we don't want to make it sound like the people they were before they became essentially zombies, demoniacs, possessed, right? That those people we're judging in some way. We're just saying, look, at this point, there's a kind of point of no return. Once you've become this monster, it is a brutal fantasy game with a lot of combat that you're just kind of quote unquote evil. Although even then, right, we're not judging the demoniacs and saying they're evil. They're just going to kill you if you let them, right?
There's no point in the fiction where we determine that the demoniacs are evil,
which is a little different than like there's stories and like karmic traditions of why people come. All to say, I think there's something so haunting about like a human body stripped to its core, and then there's a lot you can do with that. It's like you say, you take one element out of place, and that's the kind of Bosch insight and those beautiful triptychs. And then with something like Pret, it's just that very basic, like if you're in the middle of the woods at night and there's a guy behind you who's 12 feet tall, completely naked, and just like trying to eat you.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It's terrifying. Like it kind of, it's sort of, you don't need it. It's that sort of like most basic version of a story, being chased by wolves. It sort of is like a, any culture could sort of have a version of that and does. So I think, again, it's fun so we actually have a chapter on Sukhothai on sort of the nascent Thai speaking states and, what's going on there. And we have these, again, same tropes that we've brought in and thought, we'll give them some mechanics. A lot of it, honestly, we're still playtesting. So a lot of specific choices, D12 versus D10, that kind of thing. But generally the books are written. So the rule book is mostly written, almost done. So you're working on Constantinople to bring it back to sort of updates. So we work through Malfikia, all that stuff. Lots of encounters. Constantinople's coming. And then the guidebook, we now have a bunch of guest writers have turned in chapters. Gay and I have turned in chapters. So we have most of that book as well, which is fun. So we have basically the two main books pretty well fleshed out and moving towards sort of editing and layout.
Right.
So I don't know if you again, just congrats on taking your vision toward, okay, what is this as a game? How do we kind of promote it as like this kind of big history zombie game, but still keep the heart of like the things you wanted to do with it. So,
well, thank you. I'm really excited about Guide. Like Wythe mentioned, we've been working with guest authors, and Wythe and Wythe's partner, Gay, have submitted chapters which look great. I think they're really fun. Maybe we should shout out some of the other authors. We've got Albert Basili from Egypt, and he is writing a chapter. Well, he's written a chapter. We're now working on editing it about Cairo and Alexandria, which is really fun. Kind of bringing back mummies. Mummies are back, baby. Which is is interesting. Like a lot of history that I didn't know was kind of presented by having other people write about different regions. I had no idea that they stopped practicing mummification around the 7th century after the introduction of Christianity. That was news to me. But we figured out a way to bring them back. They're very fun. It's very engaging, as well as just like cool factions. In Cairo and Alexandria. We have, like you said, Michael J. Cohen is writing a very exciting chapter about, basically the Vancouver area, Northwest North America, writing about
Haida Gwaii.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah,
the traditional lands of the Dene Nation. So around basically Vancouver today, but again, nation states are not a thing globally.
No, they weren't a thing yet.
They're much more a thing, I think, in these areas in Europe where you have longer histories of dividing up territory based on whose son, like, whatever, the sort of the legacy of Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire in France and stuff. And so I think in other parts of the world, I don't know exactly, we talk about the mandala states a bit in Thailand, but, for some of these other parts of the world, we wouldn't have known. And we've said before, it was really lucky to just have a friend who like offered to write something.
Yeah.
Because he felt, it'd be cool to sort of represent it and learn that history himself and draw some cool shit. So, it's interesting to take folklore, with a very different kind of situation materially, but it's the same time period, and then say, okay, well, people are people, and there's going to be this sort of, there's an apocalypse, and there's a reaction to it, and it changes kind of factions and whatnot. Yeah. So again, that's going to be a beautiful chapter. I was just double checking, kind of what our list here. So we also have Lithuania by Konstantin Paradies, who's a really cool writer, and I think we might have said, but just to underline, Lithuania was like the last pagan state.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Really, I think Western Asia, like I think there were areas that were, obviously Christian and Muslim, and then you also had areas that were, had some sort of, as you go further east, like obviously there's Hinduism, and then there's kind of the Chinese state religion that's blending, Buddhism and animism. Mm-hmm. But I think in Lithuania, it was straight up just like Viking style, like it was a religion that is closer to that sort of kind of Norse tradition, where all the other states around it had gone Christian, basically, right?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's similar to similar to Norse belief in some ways. I mean, it's very different, right? But I mean, they still had druids called Drui, which is really interesting, and a whole pantheon of gods that Constantine kind of elaborates on in the chapter. Just to it's interesting history. It's interesting kind of context for everything. But it also, I think narratively, it does operate a little bit differently than a lot of the other places that we're exploring that are kind of like more Christian, Islam, some Jewish diaspora, things like that. But just offering that different perspective. Since
the Teutonic Knights were like trying to Christianize it when the zombie apocalypse happened. So it's a great setting for all these reasons. And there's a lot of power shifts at really at any point in time. I mean, there's one, today outside our window. So the game, of course, without trying to be, it's trying to be this meditation on history, but it ends up being a reflection on, of course, there's massive social shifts because of normal shitbaggery in politics. And then you have, apocalypses, you have revelations, new worlds. So whether we want to take that to be about, AI or probably climate disruption is the big one, right? Either way, I think you can't help but read this stuff that's deeply researched and that's really fun and written by GMs by game designers. So it's broken up. Like I will say the main book, to go back to that for a moment, it's still short in the sense that each section is short. So it just has more sections, but it sort of is a book that is, I think, a little different than Stillfleet in that sense, where it's much more sort of procedural and like, look, if you want to see this, if you need a table about that, go here or skip it, whatever, keep moving. Yeah. But it doesn't have a ton other than the Constantinople chapter of kind of those long, which is more of a setting, it's not so focused on setting. The guidebook is interesting in that the chapters are short, but they are these meditations on a region. Yeah. So they do have rules, but they also are trying to surface like, okay, just what was going on in 1390. I mean, it's at some point arbitrary, but it's also like, it's kind of fun. It's just a fun Wikipedia whole, project. And as a game designer, okay, what can I do with that? Right. So she said there's the Drui, there's the Teutonic Order, who are still kind of stuck there, right? They built a whole city and a castle. The apocalypse breaks out, and they're like, fuck, is this a sign from God, one way or the other, right? And so, they're kind of, in some ways, clumsy villains, and there are factions throughout where you're just like, how would you be sympathetic? But we've tried to kind of treat everyone as like, wherever they were, they're people. They're trying to do whatever they can to more or less grab power often. And then, this changes things. So I think it'll be a fun book. To shout out Leo Andrade, we should also mention.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Leo is writing a chapter on southern England, which is super interesting. I mean, again, kind of meditating on like the tension between Christianity and like at least in that setting, a kind of prior paganism that's seeing this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Revival movement that's happening because of the abandonment, the kind of like grand event or era that has kind of led to this, curse of undeath. But yeah, no, I mean, that one's super fun. Ethan Goldini is writing up a chapter on Venice, which is super interesting. I think it's probably the most in-depth chapter as far as like quests and
it's like a full quest where Venezia is like this empire that has really gone proto-capitalist. I mean, I think he really took the note and ran with it of this accelerates certain activities, and that they're really the big news is that Venice is just using demoniacs in warfare even more. Like, I think this has come up in the other chapters, but I think that creates a kind of interesting, almost like, bad guy state at a higher level, this sort of Risk playing board level for the Mediterranean. And of course, if you can also be, there's a faction of just people of Venice who are sort of rising up or want to do something about, the Senate. So I think it's interesting to kind of think about some of these trends and where they go. And with Leo, we talked a bit about the 100 Years' War. And Unsunken, the book on France, and how sort of the French and the English would or wouldn't keep fighting during a zombie apocalypse. And I was adamant they have to keep fighting
they have to keep fighting.
It's
that hatred,
so much funnier.
The cultural hatred between France and England throughout most of modern history, frankly, but also like very specifically during that time, was so intense that like it's almost as if large portions of both cultures were just built around that animosity in a lot of ways. And also, I mean, it was highly profitable and, drove so much of the politics at the time. It's like, you got to keep it going. Just because there's zombies between you doesn't mean you're not still going to, like, go fuck up an Englishman, right?
And the Spider-Man meme thing of, like, they're kind of the same class, and they only, I mean, there are ways in which that tension emerges pretty quickly after the Norman Conquest, but basically they're the same people, they're cadet branches of the same houses fighting each other a few generations removed. So I think there's that kind of like sibling rivalry.
For sure.
It's fun to think about how, so I think what Leo did is sort of have two major factions in London of kind of pro-war with France, anti-war with France, let's focus on apocalypse, right? And I think that's a good move, along with the new Britannic people, the sort of Celtic revival. So I think there's a lot going on in these short chapters for GMs to kind of run with. And if there's, hopefully our hope is, I think, right, correct me if I'm wrong, that GMs will either see specific stories there and run with them, or be like, ooh, I see what they're doing. I'm going to do this for insert region. I know more about like what's happening in Bolivia at this time, right? And and other people's, and like, any chapter that we just didn't get to, we don't have the resources, we're going to hopefully publish more, but we present
that's the plan for sure. But I mean, small company, we got limited resources. There's only so much time in a day. So we're doing a lot. We're doing quite a bit with what we've got. But, and we even say, rules wise, you can't cover every single situation that's going to crop up.
Right.
We cannot cover every single corner of the world, but we are trying to be ecumenical and trying to, represent as much as we can, without focusing too much on one place or the other, and especially not putting value judgments on any one place over the other as well. Like, it's very important that we continue that practice as we're kind of like working things out.
Yeah, and we're playtesting. So the third book is Unsunken Paris Below, the Mega Dungeon book I've been writing. Chris and I worked on the outline, and it's been really fun and different. We're playtesting it. Last night we met again. Big shout out to Ben and Jeff and Christian and Gay and Chris. And that's fun because we're saying, kind of like Constantinople, this is a big cosmopolitan city. And yes, there have been all these social tensions. In real life, there were horrible, really kings who were just like very, very racist, basically.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, one of the main sort of conceits in the book up front is like, look, the zombie apocalypse has changed this. And now this is a struggle for power in the heart of kind of one of the more dominant states in Western Europe, one of the richer cities, and it's sort of at a crossroads for a variety of reasons. It's like, instead of in real life, basically about to lose this extremely bizarre war with England, now they've kind of got a weird new breath with a zombie apocalypse. And so there's different powers vying for kind of what that means politically and materially. But one of the things in playtesting, I mentioned, because like Gay's playing a character who's a Buddhist monk who's like traveling to the university, and it's just like, there's lots of foreign people at the university. Yeah. Now, granted, when they say foreign, they mean, English. They mean, originally they mean
anybody not Norman. From Paris.
Anyone not from the Ile-de-France or whatever. But I mean, that's actually grown over time, right? So that was 200 years ago. Now you could easily be from the Byzantine Empire or upstate of the Byzantine Empire, IRL, right, at this time. And, probably there weren't many non-Christians, but like in our world, we'll just say, again, in the last 30 years, that distinction has dropped away. Yeah. People still have faith in something. There is quintessence, right? There's artifacts that glow, these relics. When you sing at them and they let you die normally, they often scare off demoniacs. Demoniacs want them when they're not activated. But what does that mean in terms of the traditional, books written, any faith, you pick any of them. None of them describe this apocalypse, right?
Right.
So I think it's kind of interesting to say, okay, the university has grown even more kind of ecumenical and cosmopolitan with kind of different refugees or people seeking knowledge about this changed world. So I think that's something we wanted to lean into of like, preserve that the king and nobles are scheming and kind of based in history, but then have the room for the players to kind of play any character they could imagine. And I kind of wrote it up for which we'll talk about our streaming games. Like, you can play a character from anywhere in the world. Maybe just don't be like, I'm Doug from New Jersey who loves Nintendo, the game system, which doesn't exist. It's like, as long as you're not anachronistic, you could be from anywhere and you've just arrived in the main book, Constantinople, the Queen of Cities, or in Unsunken, the sort of underground campaign, intrigue campaign, you've arrived in Paris. And there's lots of forces socially that would sort of pull you there.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think that works again. And in playtests, it does not seem to have, no one's, been weird about it, but maybe that's because our friends are, nice people, basically.
Yeah, I mean, our friends and, we should shout out 20-Sided Store as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did a big playtest campaign at 20-Sided Store here in New York City. Thank you, Lauren, for hosting us. It was fantastic. But yeah, we had 8 players across 2 tables. Both Wythe and I were GMing those games. And it was super fun and just really generative, really fun conversations. And, again, folks just really exploring like, okay, well, like, where am I from in this game?
Right.
And like, how did I end up in Constantinople? How did I end up as a pilgrim, as a conscripted criminal? Which is great. And, like, people really ran with a bunch of different, like, wild backstories and just like how they got to where they were. It was so much fun. But yeah, all that's to say is like, we're still actively playtesting as we're kind of moving forward. And that, that's something that'll never stop, right? We'll hopefully continue publishing and putting out more modules and, who knows, in a couple of years, maybe a second edition or something. We'll see. But, it's an ever mutating thing that we've got. You see what I did there? See what I did there?
And so big shout out to Lauren Blanco, 20-Sided Store, and all of our players. That was a really fun playtest, and we came up with some wild stuff, playing off of course, these 2 tables that we tried to kind of have on sort of opposite ends of the same quest and then come together, which is always fun to be able to do that in real life too, where you get more of the energy of like, they can hear each other. It's like loud. I mentioned, so I think it's timely. Maybe we can turn to like some upcoming games. So we actually have a number of games, some of which are open, some of which are sort of streams we're going to do with really friends of friends, to play test the game and show it off. And honestly, for fun, because why not, right? It's kind of sort of an excuse. It's the burden of running a Kickstarter, and we can talk a little about that and kind of fatigue and like how we put these things together. But it is also on a positive side, it's a fun thing of, well, we have to talk about it. I guess let's try to get all our friends to play it, because in a way, like, we have to, but also like, man, I know it'll be fun, right? I'll set aside that Sunday afternoon. It'll be really fun.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is like, oh, well, we need content. That's a thing, right? That's fair.
There's a pressure.
There is a pressure for that, but also like it is the best part about designing the game and working on it and getting it to like moving it through fruition into maturity, all that kind of stuff is just being able to like sit down and play it with people that you like. And, getting feedback, of course, but also just, I don't know, just like inhabiting the world. It's fun. I love, no matter how, tired or like burnt out or anything, like I love running the game. I love playing in the game. And so, that's just to say I'm looking forward to our streaming games throughout the Kickstarter campaign. We're starting actually this month before the Kickstarter kicks off. We're on September 20th. We're going to be on the Weekly Scroll.
That's right.
Which is very exciting. They're a cool podcast, the cool dudes. I don't know. No,
they're really great. We played a game of Blister Critters with them, and it was a lot of fun. And I think this will be another short game like that, high energy.
Yeah.
Us and the Weekly Scroll, and we'll be talking about it as we play a little bit. And I think that'll be great as a kind of exegetical AP, to use the, shout out to Wes Franks from Plus One XP for talking to me about this. The idea of an exegetical AP being to explain the fucking game, So I think that'll be great and fun. September 20th, so tune into Weekly Scroll and just follow them in general. They're great. They show off lots of great indie RPGs. And I think that'll be a good teaser for the campaign. Now, right before the campaign goes live, you're running another game with some friends of ours I'm playing in.
Yeah. We're gonna be playing a game with Zoe and Mac from the Maniculum podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts.
Medieval history podcast.
Yeah, it's taking medieval history and medievalism, which is something we talked about. We actually we just recorded an episode with them for the Maniculum, talking about Danse Macabre, talking about the difference between medieval studies and medievalism, how to use medievalism in games. Really fun conversation. But yeah, we're going to have them on stream with us, as well as our good buddy Leo Andrade, who, like we mentioned, writing our chapter on Southern England in the guide. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be a blast. So, that one's going to be set in Constantinople, so it's kind of the base setting of the game. But yeah, we're going to get into some antics. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, that's October 5th also, and that'll be on this stream. So September 20th will be on Weekly Scroll, and we'll post about this on socials, but just to sort of throw it out there, it's just some big announcements. October 5th will be on this stream, and we'll have a bunch of shows after that on this stream. Yeah. And that's right before launch. So we launch October 7th.
Yeah, we launch 2 days after that on October 7th. So, I mean, I guess, now's a good time to say that if you haven't already, little CTA, little call to action for you. Please go and follow along the campaign. We've got a pre-launch page up. Every follow kind of helps boost and get the word out, all of that good stuff. And we'll put the link in the show notes. But it is stillfleet.com/DanseKS. So DANSEKS. And that'll take you right to the pre-launch page.
Take you to the page, yeah.
And then, you'll get updates. You will be first to know on October 7th, once we go live with the campaign.
We know that people follow a lot of campaigns, and, money's tight, and we appreciate anyone who spends time and energy, and especially hard-earned cash on this stuff. But, it's something we've been working on for a long time. And part of the idea of the company is to try to employ artists and pay somewhere close to reasonable amounts of money in production, and not just kind of run campaigns where it's like, finger crossing and no, we actually lost money, but hey, we're winning in our hearts. It's like, yeah, sure. I get it. I've done that. And I also feel like it would be nice to have, artists who bring out games after years of work and at least don't sort of lose a ton of money and time. So we can at least kind of, do a good job printing the books and all that stuff. So we look forward to the campaign, and I'm happy to fill in. Maybe at a later date we can go into, if we want to do sort of an episode, maybe with somebody else, but nerding out about the Kickstarter. But so date-wise, so we have October 5th, stream with the Maniculum and Leo Andrade. October 7th, we're launching. And then October 8th, we're kicking off limited West Marches playtest with the creator, so with Chris and me, and hopefully some guest GMs, and that'll be on the server. So
that's going to be on our Discord, which, we can also put a link to the invite into the show notes of this episode, of course. But yeah, I mean, join us. Come and play. It's going to be fun. We'll be doing kind of like wilderness crawl. It'll be a little bit lighter in terms of like narrative, more kind of like exploration and all of that good stuff. Drop in, drop out, kind of as you want to. But that'll be a great time. It's an opportunity to try out the system. Also just an opportunity to, like, if you've got questions, or if you're a medieval history nerd like myself, we can chat about it. We can get into an argument about whether or not flails were used at the time. Which has already happened. But please come play with us. It'll be fun. And that'll be going on kind of intermittently throughout the campaign. I won't be GMing every single one of those, but Wythe will be stepping in. Hopefully we get some other friends who are familiar with the system to come in. So you'll get like a wide range of experiences with that.
Mine will be real narrative. I love having a strong, like, and you've already been thrown into this plot. West Marches, maybe
we can work together on that. Like, I can lead them to the place, and then you can hit them with the brutal narrative once they get to the tower or whatever.
It's a walking. There's the season where they just hang out, and then for some reason, I feel like every season is like that. They're like, we finally found a place that's safe.
We found the stronghold. No, it's not safe.
Someone left the front door open.
Every
in a fucking apocalypse. Anyway, so we'll do that. So that's October 8th, and then ongoing. And I think October 8th we said might be more of like, come make a character with Chris, like kind of like a big session 0.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a more of
some light role playing.
Yeah, session 0, and then some kind of light RP and kind of like getting things going from there. But I mean, we'll walk through character creation and all that good stuff. I mean, we've also got a buttload of pre-gens, so that's pre-gens. Always an option as well for those who are interested. But yeah, I mean, beyond October 8th, we've also got more streaming games. So on the 12th, Wife Here is going to be running a game set in Paris using the Unsunken kind of book as the guide for that. It's really fun. I mean, we didn't say, Wife did mention that a lot of that book takes place underground. A lot of that setting takes place underground, which was something that, I was really excited about because before the catacombs were the catacombs, which happened in about the 1750s or so. It's when they started building that out. They were just mines. They were gypsum mines beneath.
Well, mostly limestone and then gypsum in the north. Yeah, so they had all these mines and then Roman sewers.
Right.
And they definitely had ossuaries with, the calaria, the basement levels of all of these many ecclesiastic communities. So you had all these abbeys and convents and monasteries. And a lot of the buildings, I think, had some sort of basement level, not like a dungeon in D&D, but still like a place that's, all year round kind of cool. You would keep, I guess like a parsnip. I don't know. You'd keep stuff down
parsnips,
there.
Yeah. Root cellars.
And certainly the king was keeping prisoners in the calaria of the kind of castles of the Palais de Cité and the Louvre and the Grand Châtelet and all this stuff. So, I think it was interesting kind of what if to just say, we'll just connect all of them, right? Like, we'll make them bigger than in real life without any specific claims. We'll just, write the book as though it's much more like D&D in that sense.
Yeah.
And they're connected by tunnels, and there are plots from different factions that want different things down there, and there's different kind of threats, different new, intelligent demoniacs, Rex, Reges, and there are even, just other kinds of more normcore demoniacs, and drawing again from French folklore. Yep. So I think that'll be a fun one, and we'll just explore a piece of it for a couple hours, on October 12th.
Yeah. So if you're into dungeon crawls, make sure to tune in for that. It'll be great.
We're making fun of French stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Always.
We're trying to get some French friends to read the book and make sure it's not... We, again, tried to be very respectful, but French is
They're fine. They're fine.
October 19th is the next one. That's an actual play with Chris. That'll be streamed. So again, both the 12th, the 19th, those will be here on the stream.
Yeah. We're going to be playing that game with the cast of Twice Rolled Tales. So they're friends of the pod, friends of the studio, local here to New York. We've both done some work with them, some fun AP stuff. But they're very sweet. They're very, very good actual play artistes, I guess you could say. And I'm excited to play with them. They've not entered the world of Danse Macabre, so we'll traumatize them in some way. But that'll be great. For that one, I'm going to be adapting the Lithuania setting that we had chatted about earlier that our friend Constantine is writing. So that'll be a little bit different. Might see some big clashes between the Druid and the Teutonic Order. I think, it's a very kind of epic setup. So I feel like I gotta run with it. But yeah, that'll be fun with Twice Rolled with Lenny, Emily, and Phoebe. It's gonna be a lot of goofiness, I think, for that one. It'll be good. Yeah.
Druid and Teutonic Order. That's like the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins of the mid 14th century. Anyway,
it's the Kendrick and Drake of the 1390s.
You got to do it. So
BBL Teutonics.
That brings us to. So I think we're wrapping up, and we're right about an hour anyway. With our big announcement.
Yeah.
So lots of big announcements here. We already announced the campaign, so that's not really an announcement. But, the campaign goes live October 7th. On October 26th, we have our first live event.
Yeah. We are producing a big old live streamed AP event. It's going to be taking place here in Queens, New York, in Ridgewood at the Stone Circle Theater. And we're going to be playing live on stage with some of the cast of Fun City. Jen De La Vega, Mike Rignetta, and Bijan Stevens are going to be joining us for a big, weird, fun heist that's going to see the players go from Constantinople to Nicaea and maybe back again if they survive. We'll find out.
So that's a big one. We can't say more because we're still figuring out what exactly the hell we're going to do, but it's mostly in our heads, and it'll be really fun. It's going to be a beautiful event with just some of our favorite, people to work with are, we're obviously biased with Jen, but, in general, our friends, people we really admire, we listen to their pods and we watch them play other games. So it's fun to be able to bring them to play, for one night, a game of DM.
Yeah.
So watch out for that. We will post, information about it, but,
we'll post about tickets and all that stuff as it comes up. We're ironing it out at the moment. But we'll post an update once ticket sales go live and all that good stuff. But if you are in New York or, nearby, come through. It's going to be a really good time. Stone Circle Theater is beautiful. It's attached to an old Presbyterian church. It's creepy. It's like the perfect place to play Danse Macabre, really.
Yeah, I imagine if you're into religious services, it's not creepy when it's lighted a certain way.
I am biased
with the organ, but we've seen they do dungeon synth shows and things like that. And so I think with the lighting we'll have, and with obviously the tone, the sort of tenor of the game, I think it'll be goofy and fun because it'll be the cast of some of the cast of Fun City Ventures live, but it'll also be really dark and a wonderful entry point to just sort of show off the game with the energy that you only get from a live audience, right? People yelling and gasping, hopefully, maybe fainting. I don't know. So
maybe.
I think that's it.
It's like a 1950s horror movie. The poster is like 50 people fainted at the screening of this.
Or it's like the Grand Guignol. It's like a 1920s, like a dentist with like pliers that are 4 feet long or something. Yeah. No teeth stuff. They're right.
No teeth stuff.
No teeth stuff. There won't be teeth stuff.
Yeah, there won't be teeth stuff.
That's it. So
that's it.
I think with that, this is a good time maybe to wrap up, unless, Chris, you have any other announcements, pluggables, or just things you want to say about Danse Macabre and how excited we are.
I'm very excited.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I hope you are as well.
Oh, I am. I definitely am.
I think our whole team is excited. It's been really fun. I think last thing as far as that goes, just a big shout out to Wythe, of course, for doing copy editing and helping kind of guide this whole process. Big shout out to Gay, to White's partner, for working on ads, doing video, just really supporting us through this whole process. She's been amazing to work with on that. Tony Grasso, who is doing graphic design and layout for the book, as well as some illustrations, kind of across all the different books. But he's just been...
He's a machine, yeah.
He's killing it. It's crazy. It's crazy to give him a brief and just like watch it happen. It's incredible. And of course to Ethan Goldini, working on some illustrations, working on that Venice chapter, really helping support everything. Thanks to all of you. And thanks to all of you, listeners of Why We Roll, for listening to us rant about this project.
Yeah.
But otherwise, again, just, little CTA for you folks. Follow along with the pre-launch, and also once we go live on the campaign on October 7th. But stillfleet.com/dance, KS, DANSE, KS, all one word there. But yeah, follow along, share with your friends who are into OSR, who are into zombies, who are into medieval history, or just into indie TTRPGs and the Herculean labor of love that is this cottage industry.
No AI and
no AI.
A lot of Wikipedia and a lot of library books, but no AI. So thanks again, anyone listening to Why We Roll. And if you have further questions for Christopher Pickett, creator of Danse Macabre Medieval Horror Role-Playing, or myself and the team, let us know. We can definitely do some episodes more focused on sort of the business side, or getting more to the nitty-gritty about anything specific in history. This episode was just really to celebrate Chris and also just kind of go through like what is this game at the end, because it is at the end of the day specific books, right? They're publishing specific books. We wanted to kind of finally sort of announce that we'll put out all this information.
And I guess we should reiterate too the very specific offerings, right? So there's the Danse Macabre Medieval Horror Role-Playing core rulebook. There is going to be Guide to the Abandoned World, which is our setting, kind of broad setting supplement that we've been talking about. There will be Unsunken, Paris Below by Wythe, which is, big mega dungeon-ish setting. I mean, it's more than that. I would argue it's much more than that. But it does, if you're into dungeon crawls, we got you. We got you. And then also, we've got some other, we've got some fun zines and stretch goals that, they're secrets for now, but eventually they'll be revealed.
So we'll see, but that is the core, right? It's a 200-page A5 rulebook,
Yep.
about a 100-page guide that goes with it, that is sort of all these other settings and rules. And then Unsunken, I'm not sure actually how long it'll be. Let's say about 100-page, again, A5.
Sure. Yeah,
so,
sounds good.
on the bookshelf, it's kind of like, I would say the rollout of, in terms of physical product design, something like Outcast Silver Raiders, where there's multiple volumes, they go together. You can you don't need all of them, but obviously our intent is people would pick up the book, the rule book and the guide, because those two especially just give you tons and tons of rules. Unsunken's a little different in its intent.
Yeah.
So there's other products. Those are the three we've been working on assiduously for a year, pretty much.
About a year.
So it's nice to finally sort of unveil and feel like, that's what they are.
That's a thing. They're things.
I mean, they're not done, but yeah, they're done.
But they exist.
So with that, White Marshall is Christopher Pickett, and you're listening to a podcast.
Thanks for listening to Why We Roll.
Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on all social media at Stillfleet. You can find out more about Danse Macabre, Stillfleet, and all of our games over at stillfleet.com.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the god that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my god.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.